Hello, I'm Jimmy Couple, and today I'm going to show you how to get the most out of Command Center. First, I'm going to show you the full workflow if you're using Command Center for everything, like for complex PR, and then I'll talk about how to use, use smaller things if you have less complex PR, or use bits and pieces if you want to integrate it with an existing workflow. Alright, so let's start plan and prompt. So, when you open Command Center, just simply add an existing project, such as a Git repository, and you can also, of course, create new or clone from GitHub. So now you have a project here, and we generally recommend that every feature has its own workspace, so let's go and add Giphy support, which, alright, so now as creating, I can simply queue up a message, and for complex changes, generally recommend discussing the plan before you implement, and it's often best to put the plan in a file so you can collaboratively edit. It's going to make things way too complicated, so just let's queue this message up. Alright, so now while this is running, you're almost certainly going to want to do something else, and that brings us to the next phase of the workflow, working in parallel. And the first of our theses, which is that agentic coding is about multitasking. And so in support of that, well, you can very easily just go ahead and create another workspace, and with a single hotkey, just type over to it and do something else. Okay. So this is working, but here's a workspace where I've already finished this. Okay, so by the way, you might have noticed our most controversial UI decision, which is that most of the screen is taken up by this diff view, whereas in basically every single other tool, most of the screen is taken up by the chat. And that brings us to the second of our theses, which is there's no point in staring at a chat window all day, because it's like, this is the output I want. If I'm staring at the chat window, I'm getting it's step-by-step thinking. No, thank you. But of course, you can switch between chat and code with a single hotkey, and also between being on part of the screen and being full screen. Okay. So here I have my plan, and I don't know, I might want to edit this by hand bits, again, leave feedback, and I can easily jump into my favorite editor. Okay, so then at some point you say, great, let's just implement this. Oops. And then that's going to go for a while. I'm going to cancel that. Okay, so that's going to go for a while. And then you wind up with something like this. So that brings us to the next phase of the workflow, which is refactoring. The AI is missing big picture. It's going to create a lot of bad code, very poorly designed stuff that's going to give you a lot of bugs, to make it more likely to make mistakes on the next prompt, and generally be really bloated and eat up your token context. So for a large change, generally you want to press this button, and that's going to run for a while and bring it to a better design. And now, when that's finished, I actually already refactored this, then okay. So, do you want to read this thing? Well, in this case, this is complicated desktop software that has a lot of features, a lot of room for bugs. So, it's like, this is a code base where quality matters. So the answer here would be yes. And then you generally press this button. You're also able to, from this walkthroughs pane, configure which files you'd like included, control the range, and eventually you'll get a walkthrough. So this brings us to the next pillar. All right, so say you want to read. So what do? is also our thesis. Yeah, quality understanding still matters, and understanding is not about explanations. So, okay, so the normal way to read such a diff, and oh my god, this thing is 3,000 lines, is literally to look at it in alphabetical order. It's like, oh, clearly, you should look at the localization messages first, because they're first alphabetically. And what people tend to do in larger diffs is like scroll up and down looking for the thing that makes sense. So it's like, okay, looks like this test was refactored to use something else, but I have no context for why this is. So it's like, I'm getting nothing from looking at this hunk. So instead of scrolling up and down, you can just look at things. Oops. You can just look at things in a logical order. So here, this is a walkthrough, and the idea is that generally it's laid out in a way that you can in fact read front to back. And this nice promise that instead of like scrolling up and down, and oh, okay, I can understand this now, I can understand this now, that if you, all you need to do is press the right arrow key 130 times and you'll be totally through. Now, as you're going along, you might find various things that you don't like. So for instance, so right here, I see that it is hard coding these URLs, and maybe I want these to be in a configuration file. And this brings us to the next part of our thesis and the next part of the workflow, which is, okay, so next is perfect, so you understand what's going on, you see things you want to do differently, now you want to revise. The next part of our thesis is that building complicated features requires having benefits from having many AI sessions. So, okay, so I can tell it to don't hard code this URL, use config file. And I could put that in the same agent session that produced all this code. And it would do that, and it would make my session longer. When the sessions get longer, they get stupider and more expensive. And it blocks everything else you want to do with that context. So this is a pretty standalone thing. I should do this separately. So I just press Command Enter, and bam, now I have a new agent going just for this. And by the way, there's nothing about the feedback that ties it to this one line. I could just as easily say fix everything else like this too, and yep, it's gonna go rewrite a bunch of my code. So it's pretty common for me personally, for larger PRs, I'm going to have about 20 different agent chats. Because first you have a chat where you're working the plan, potentially multiple if you want to revise various parts. Then you might have one where you implement the plan. Then you might have one where you give feedbacks. So a bunch of small ones where you give feedbacks like I did now. And maybe some more where you ask it, it's like, well, it said to do things this way, but like, do other people do it that way? Please research on the internet. That's a separate chat. So now, in addition to leaving feedbacks, press Command Enter. I can also create other chats simply by mousing over here. You can use a codex for this one. And as a tangent, I'm going to show you one of my favorite tricks. So, I'm going to say something like, fix the food, fix the bug. Here's one of my favorite tricks to do. So, suppose I have Claude fix a bug. I might say, Claude session, said it did a bunch of testing, but lied. Prove that it lied. That's one of my favorite things to do. Total tangent. Anyway, So, okay. So now, say you finished already, and you can just, okay. So at some point you want to test it. You probably want to test at least after refactoring, potentially after the reading, and you can do whatever you do. You can open some terminals. All right, so now it's ready, and time to ship. All right, so you could press the commit button, and then press the push button, and the create pull request button. Or if you have the GitHub CLI, then you can simply ask your AI to do it for you. So let's discuss and show you a few more things. So first, a point I want to make about the walkthroughs is that walkthroughs are not explanations. Walkthroughs are not explanations, and walkthroughs are not explanations. There's basically three things going on here. The most important thing is the chunking and ordering. That's instead of the alphabetical order, you get things in order that makes sense, and you kind of get the gamification of just press the right arrow key. The second thing that's going on is that you have these little highlights here, and kind of what these are for is that they help you mentally chunk this. So without these, okay, let me just find a better example. Okay, sure. So if you're already familiar with this code, then this might be very easy to read, like, okay, this goes together, these two things go together. But having these here helps you mentally chunk it. It's like pre-digesting. There are these explanations here, but those are tertiary. I personally read them pretty seldom. Now, if you're in a tech stack or in a code base that you're much less familiar with, then these can be very useful as actual explanations. And also in that case, you might benefit from turning up the detail level. So next I want to tell you about snapshots. So snapshots have two purposes. So first, it often happens that the AI will delete a lot of your code or undo work. If that happens, then simply find the relevant snapshot and press the restore button, or here. And in fact, even if you're not developing with Command Center, it can be helpful to have Command Center running in the background for exactly this reason. The second thing that snapshots do is that these are currently the easiest way to view the moment-by-moment changes of what it's doing. So, okay, so I see that a bit ago there were this batch of changes, now there's this batch of changes. Let's see what's going on here. Another option is that if you go into your agent chat and you turn off brief mode, then you can find the various write actions and okay, I guess not the write actions, but the edit actions. And yeah, but that is going to be very fine-grained. The snapshots are less crazy fine-grained. Next, I want to tell you about the secret walkthrough tool. So this button here, and ditto the button on the walkthrough screen, is meant for giving you a walkthrough of everything that changed in a diff or in a range. But if you use this magic incantation, you can get a walkthrough of whatever you want. By the time you see this video, there's likely to be a button for this. I already have it in a branch here. And then we'll go a bit, and okay, never mind. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Anyway, it will give you a link to open that walkthrough, and those custom walkthroughs will also appear in the walkthroughs pane. Now within our settings menu, the most interesting thing is this option right here. I don't think any other tool has this. So last week, I was laptop closed in backpack, shipping PRs while having breakfast with a friend. The last thing I want to share is, a lot of people say, Jimmy, I like the refactorings, I like the walkthroughs, I already have my own workflow. Can I just use those? And for that, well, you can simply install our skills, and now you can run your agents from any other interface. And just ask for refactoring, ask for walkthrough, and it will launch Command Center to generate those for you. Okay, so I've given you a pretty whirlwind tour. There certainly are a lot more buttons to the software. There's a lot more things that you can do with it. But, well, I think I've given you enough now to set you well on your way to becoming a hyper-productive AI software engineer of high-quality code using Command Center. Happy coding.